At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details. At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. I have been talking to Yael Ossowski, and it occurred to me we probably ought to hit the record button. That's how it goes when very old friends jump on the program. Early adapter, can I use that? That's a big tech term. Tech bros love that early adapter term. You, sir, were an early adapter to the things I do, and I appreciate you. Good to see you again.
Oh, great to see you, Andrew. And also, congrats on the switch over to Substack. You know, I've seen you've made that transition. That's looking really nice. Getting your words out there and hopefully multiplying. Yeah, I've been very Twitter centric, and Twitter is very, let's just be kind and call it unstable at the moment. What's the old magic 8-ball? Cloudy future, uncertain future. Wanted to have kind of a one-stop shop because I do a lot of different stuff with the columns and stuff. So I appreciate that. He is, of course, with the Consumer Choice Center, our very good friends going all the way back to the radio days. You got a piece up in USA Today. Our old friends at the FTC, buddy, they just keep at it, don't they? We talked about a week or so ago on the program about them going after big gaming as part of their big tech initiatives. Now you're in USA Today. Let's start this way because I don't know if you get wisdom with age, but you have seen things before. This stuff with Amazon cracks me up because if I go back to the 90s, it's the exact same arguments we had over Walmart, almost to the T. And if you go back further, you'll find it. The arguments never change, just the main character changes. Whoever the biggest consumer on the block is when it comes to, in this case, consumer goods, they get all the attention for regulation, antitrust. I've seen this movie before, my friend. This is just a new spin on it with some high-tech nomenclature, right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my day, when I was getting onto the internet, figuring stuff out, 95, 96, a little bit after, the big talk of the town was Microsoft. And I know you talked about that with Steven, so you were able to go through the FTC hurdles with that. But it's much the same. Microsoft is at the time was a very new company. Like, look, there just were not many software companies that were also making hardware. And their model was, yes, to create some hardware, but they mostly had software, their operating system for the computer. And they would sell that, and it would be adaptable to a bunch of computers. And you had different computer manufacturers from the US or from Germany or Japan that could actually put up a machine and use that software, and it became ubiquitous. And because something is ubiquitous, for some, that just means, hey, it's great. It's a platform. I understand it. I'm at school. I use Microsoft. I use Windows. I go here. I use Windows. I'm able to learn. You have governmental departments that use Windows. But for, back in those days, you had the FTC that was like, well, this is a monopoly, obviously. It's like, of what? This is like a brand new industry that came out of nowhere that is novel and that is creating an entirely new category of value to consumers. So back then it was Windows, Microsoft. Obviously, they were broken up, as it were. They technically never had to go through with it. They just had to pay massive fines to the government. But what we've seen today is that we have a new bad guy in town, which is very strange to say because that bad guy happens to be the second most popular brand in the entire country, and that's Amazon. behind the U.S. military, by the way. So you have a connection there. But to see that this is now our Emmanuel Goldstein 2-minute hate, and not, again, not written for the American populace. If this was a pure direct democracy, we would not have these actions on Amazon that are being floated by the Federal Trade Commission. What we do have is a very small literati, as it were, that have power because Joe Biden basically empowered every progressive organization in the world when he was nominating people for agencies when he came in. So we have Lena Khan, who's there, Yale Law School graduate, my age, actually. And she has always had a big hate for Amazon, big hate for Meta, big hate for any of the big companies. She has essentially written a playbook for suing them, and she's already trying to do this. We saw one lawsuit that already hit this summer about Prime and how hard it is, Andrew, how hard it is to unsubscribe, which is obviously ridiculous for anyone who's done this. But that was sort of the opening salvo. And what I mentioned in the piece is just that we're seeing the larger case that's being openly discussed now, which just has to do with Prime as a brand and the fact that Amazon has all of these different companies, whether it be web services, Prime Video, shipping, logistics, even Whole Foods. That's been mentioned as well. So there's plenty of action there that the FTC would like to take. What's stopping them right now? The legal justice system, the Constitution, and the fact that American consumers love Amazon.
Yeah, and they love Amazon. We need to back up for just a second, though, and I don't want to go loggy transportation or too much. Why people love Amazon? I mentioned Walmart earlier. Walmart beat Sam Walton, a real genius in business. Real. If you read through the annuals of American business, Sam Walton's up there with whoever you want to put up there, Vanderbilt's, Carnegie, whoever. He figured it out. We're going to build a logistics network to get these goods. We're going to make money in the margins was his thing. And they did it with their logistics, and they did it with their scanning systems and all that. What Amazon did was they almost reverse engineered and did it the other way. We're going to do all this without any overhead. We're going to use the internet. We're going to get it to you the next day. And then slowly over the last 10 years, they've started you mentioned the Amazon vans. That's all new in the last 10 years. They put their network of logistics in after they got their worldwide branding and especially their domestic stuff. That's how you get that package next day in a lot of places. Some days, some cities now, you get it same day if you get it in by 7. That's why people like Amazon. I get it. I click it. I get it quick. I get it at a good price. That's why they like it. Not to go on brand for consumer choice, but that's consumer choice to a T. They found a niche in the market. They killed it. They do it better than anybody else, and they've made a lot of money at it. And the government kind of got left behind on, well, wait a minute, we can't regulate this because it's never been done this way before. And that's where this starts becoming, I don't want to say predatory, but regulatory practices get predatory. They go after the biggest person on the block, and that's Amazon. Not that Amazon doesn't need regulated, not that they don't need to be kept appraised of their labor practices and all that. There's a function of government there. But what the folks at the FTC are doing, that's not what they're doing. They're just picking the biggest name on the block that's got the new hot thing and going after them. Am I misreading this? Because that's pretty much where I'm at on it.
No, I think you're right. And I did mention in the piece, I mean, there are real reasons to have regulatory scorn against a company like Amazon. The two examples that I mentioned are the Ring surveillance thing that you put outside your door. Essentially, this subsidiary of Amazon has basically had an open door to any law enforcement agency. And they've been incredibly lax with following through on asking for court orders. That is pretty concerning. Second one is we have a lot of fake, reviews, and there's bot accounts and stuff doing China. I mean, that's super easy to fix with algorithms and things. They just haven't really done that. That can deceive people. That is something that an FTC should absolutely look at. But when it comes to everything else, I mean, come on. I remember I was an early Amazon customer, really when it was just books. And, you would compare prices. And I remember going to Books A Million in Concord Mills and, looking at what the price was there versus on Amazon. And most of the time it was cheaper in the store. And then there was an apex. There was a moment, I don't know exactly the year it was, maybe it was 2010, 11. Amazon just started winning and winning and winning. And it started expanding and attracting third-party sellers out the wazoo, which is the important part. Because the thing about Amazon is, yes, it's a marketplace and they have their own products, but anybody can technically sell on Amazon. You just got to pass the test, be sure you have all your scruples, your paperwork, blah, blah, blah. You can set up your vendor shop there on Amazon. That is like an amazing platform. Now, FTC comes in and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. The way that you're treating the people who you've allowed onto your platform needs to be done in X and Y way. You invented this system, fairly new for a global e-commerce site, but these are the new rules and standards that we're applying to you. That just doesn't pass muster. There's, again, all kinds of small things that they're bringing up in the context of these lawsuits, and there have been mostly leaks. This tells you something about the FTC. We actually have the only lawsuit that's come out right now is the one against the Prime subscription. Oh, bad, so hard to unsubscribe. Everything else is just rumors in media, and it's been Lena Khan's team and the FTC leaking to reporters saying, we're going after them for this, this, and this. We're going to slam them for this and another thing. And it's kind of served as this trickle of news. My opinion is it's to get the American people ready for when this hits, and maybe they've heard the worst example of one thing. I just still don't think it's going to work because everybody knows somebody who's either worked at the Amazon warehouse or they see a van daily or they've ordered something from there or sold something there. It's so integrated into our economy that, nobody is sitting there with a huge grudge against Amazon, except people who have an ideological disposition to not like larger companies that happen to be online. And that's unfortunate.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details. At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Yeah, Yael Ossowski joining us. We've talked about this before, but I think it bears bringing it up again. You brought up that great Orrin Hatch quote about hipster antitrust. The terms antitrust and its first cousin monopoly are getting absolutely abused when it comes to big tech companies like Amazon and things like this, because but here's the problem. People still think of those terms in the old-fashioned industrial policy and regulation ways, and they don't fit cleanly. We talked about this with the Microsoft stuff with Stefan. You're talking about market shares that are way, way lower, even as big as an Amazon is, even as big as a Microsoft is. It's nothing like when they were going after the real antitrust breakers in the 30s and 40s. there is a real problem with the U.S. government, and some of it's statutory in the law, and it's not all their fault. But things like the FTC, they're using the old-fashioned terminologies for the industrial age, for this new media age, and it just doesn't fit. And so much of what they're doing, and you can talk about Khan and her, Chairman Khan and her theories and her ideologies. You just hear that 1930s ideology just pouring out of her like she's talking about the robber barons. And there's not robber barons in big tech, but when you go to make industrial policy for big tech, it doesn't fit at all. So even if you agree, disagree, whatever, it's going to be a mess because it doesn't really apply. And yet we're trying to use these terms again.
Yeah, and I'm not a Jeff Bezos stan, but just think of his story. This guy, grew up stepfather from Cuba, teenage mom, just not super well rich guy. He's not a Vanderbilt, and built this company up over years and years. But the history of antitrust, by the way, is any kind of benefits that were offered at very cheap prices or free to certain industries or titans. So this happened with the settling of the American West. You had this land that was just claimed for pennies, given to certain people, and they were able to build and use those resources, and they got a benefit from the government. And they've been given that huge start that allowed them to maintain a monopoly position in so that nobody could mount an opposition. Nobody could form a different company to have oil. We can look at tobacco. American tobacco is the same thing. Standard Oil. AT&T, AT&T is one of the largest monopolies that was broken up, and it was much the same. They were given a license by the government to have basically control of our telecommunications lines. Now, those are all privileges that are granted by government and therefore warp the market over time, and there are consequences for consumers because they have to pay higher costs because there is no competition. We look today, a company like Amazon or even Facebook, Meta, whatever, I mean, this is not like a government license. People claim that because we have Section 230, which allows people to essentially not be held liable for comments on their sites or websites, that is somehow a government benefit. I think is an outright lie. And these are companies that have been built up from nothing, and they've only provided value. And you just can't compare that to, the old trusts of the day, whether it was in railroads, oil, or tobacco, where you had government monopolies, government enforced monopolies. We learn about that in economics a lot. It exists in some areas. You could say it exists today in, weapons manufacturing. Not to get on that topic, which I know you know a lot about, but these are areas that are propped up by government. Because what does government represent versus Amazon? Who can put me in a jail cell and who can get me batteries to my door in 3 hours? That is, I think, the difference. It's why I don't buy the larger narrative of surveillance capitalism, which we can talk about probably another time. But it just goes to show why the FTC's cases are just not helping anybody. And the entire idea of consumer welfare, which is supposed to be what modern antitrust is, has just been thrown out.
Yeah, Ossowski joining us. There's another part to this down the road that worries me. When you have something like the FTC not being used, and again, we can yell small government and all that. There's a proper function for the FTC that is important. It should be doing some oversight on businesses. It has a role to play. But for the current administration, their record in court was really, really good. They were getting about a 70%, something like that, success rate on their lawsuits. They usually knew what they were doing. When you have a government organization like the FTC that has a good role and it's not being done properly and it's being, frankly, in my opinion, being abused, you referred to, they call it jawboning. It's the government putting pressure on, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to make people do stuff, right? The problem is those things, once the agencies stop doing their functions, and in this case, we're on Amazon's side, Amazon's going to pay a lot of money in lobbyists. We know the hundreds of millions of dollars Facebook is pummeling into Congress for lobbying and they're going to want to start writing the rules for these regulations in the future to protect themselves. And you want to talk about consumer choice, when the big tech and the big governments start getting together and the industries and they start making all the rules, that's when the consumers really get screwed. That's why you got to hold these things accountable, even if it's going against something you may or may not like. you got to rein this stuff in now, because that's what's coming down the road. And we've seen it in history, and we see it now with the way these big tech hearings are going.
Yeah, I very much agree. And we see it happening in front of our eyes with artificial intelligence. So there are a couple of frameworks that are out there. Chuck Schumer has written one. There's one in the European Union. The UK has a plan. And they've called in Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, and essentially given him carte blanche to introduce any kind of rules he'd like to see. And what do you think he's going to do? Well, he's going to try to cut out Google Bart or Barf or whatever it's called, or any other AI company out there. And we cannot allow the industry to just write the rules at the outset. I think there has to be, when normally we say entrepreneurial discovery, we need to have regulatory discovery too. If we don't know what the rules should be just yet, there's a lot of saying if there ought to be a law, but we can't know what exactly that should be. We all have in mind various guardrails, whether it comes to, representation, stealing, copyright. There's a lot of things that we know there. I think the biggest problem with AI is going to come down to labor, and particularly if we look at autonomous vehicles and we look at labor unions. We're already seeing this in San Francisco to a good extent. But it is true that we need to have regulatory agencies in the competition realm that do keep a track on stuff, because a lot of stuff is actually cartels. If you look at the sugar industry, for instance, there's the U.S. sugar program, this kind of cronyist thing that continues to funnel profits to, the big sugar producers. And then we've got all of these different realms where people have secret deals that artificially keep prices high. Oftentimes, this is done at the behest of some legislative concern and some law that passed, but also sometimes it is private, off-the-books things. We will only buy from you here. We promise not to sell this below this price. That is obviously, blindly, we can say this is an antitrust violation. And we've seen it, I believe there have been recent cases on contact lens companies that kind of do this, where they have exclusive deals with doctors. I mean, there are ways that this is happening right now that aren't being addressed. And I think that's very concerning. Also, one thing, I'm very open in saying this, there's a lot of the crypto industry. Most of the crypto industry is scams and deceptions that happen all day. And we all see the spam crypto tweets, and we see all of the things, and we know it's obviously there's so many Ponzi's out there. This would be, page one of FTC 20 years ago. Today it just goes by the wayside. You get something from maybe the SEC, if they can put Kim Kardashian's name on it because it gets them some mentions. But there's a lot of people losing a lot of money here who are being deceived, lied to, and there's no action that's coming from FTC. It's all coming from the financial regulators after the fact, once people have already lost their money. So I think that should occupy a good amount of time for the antitrust, because that is sapping a lot of money from Americans right now. And, there are obviously other examples and things that are happening. We also have to ensure that our government remains very open to innovation, particularly in the face of what we see from communist China. We would talk about Amazon, blah, blah, blah. We have Alibaba, which could eat Amazon's lunch tomorrow if it was allowed to grow in the US more. They already do in places like Canada and Western Europe. Alibaba is growing. It's huge. And because they have incredibly cheap shipping costs from their containers and all these deals, from China, they could actually become more popular, bigger than Amazon. Right now, Amazon just happens to have good consumer loyalty, customer loyalty, Prime. They've got all these other benefits that Alibaba can't offer yet. If they get cut down, we could see a world where even more tech would be owned, would be distributed by the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliates. I think that is much more concerning than, having a Prime van going by my house every couple days.
Religion is at the intersection of our 21st century life, even if we don't express a faith. At a time when it seems that religion isn't as prevalent as it once was, it still leaves its mark everywhere. As a pastor, I know that religion isn't something I just do on a Sunday, but it's found in every nook and cranny of my life. Sexuality, politics, social media, the economy, war, nationalism, all have some kind of religious angle to them. And as a communicator, I want to find the stories that can help people understand this part of our society that is so important to so many. Hi, I'm Dennis Sanders, and I'm the host of Church and Main. Church and Main is a podcast about the journey of faith and where it intersects with modern life. I look at faith with a journalist's eye, asking the who, where, what, why, and how religion affects some of the major issues of the day. Join me as we journey together. You can listen to Church and Main podcast at the website churchandmain.org or on your favorite podcast app. I look forward to seeing you.
Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, it's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. Feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse? This is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com. Yeah, I agree. Yael Ossowski joining us. You mentioned crypto. You mentioned Alibaba, something I've actually kind of been keeping one eye on for the last year or two, especially, 2 years ago, their chairman got in a little bit of hot water with the Chinese government and fast talked his way out of it. I'm like, there's a check wrote there for down the road somewhere we're going to have to keep an eye on. What else in the headlines for our listeners are you keeping your eye out on, whether it's, a congressional hearing thing, a revolutionary technology thing? What are you watching in the headlines for folks that they can watch so when it pops up virally, they'll know, that's something I need to pay attention to?
So here's one I know that you haven't talked about on your show. As far as I know, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in Canada on basically traditional news media versus new media and tech firms. So in Canada, it was called the Online News Act. In the U.S., we have our version, the JCPA, Journalism Competition and Preservation Act. This is essentially the idea, which first came from, I can say commie Australia, because their policies lately are pretty bad. But essentially the idea from Australia was we force tech firms to sit down with news publishers, news broadcasters, and pay them money for all of the classifieds and advertising money that has shifted from traditional newspapers to tech firms, Google, Facebook, you name it. So in Canada, we're seeing the absolute disaster that this has caused. They passed the bill, went into royal assent, and Meta, predictably, as they stated they would do, cut off Canadian news websites so that they are not subject to this law. Now, there's been outcry and a lot of misinformation about why this happened. It was because the government passed the law forcing them to pay old school print journos. And there's a lot to unpack there. But if we look at the Australian example, it has not been a success at all. And the biggest beneficiaries have actually been Rupert Murdoch and a couple of his companies, because he owns still a lot of the broadcast and some of the print media down there. So what we're using is government power to try to force a new industry to pay an old industry. And journalism is undergoing a renaissance right now. I mean, you use Substack, YouTube, podcasting, open platforms. You also are in newspapers. You're also in other media. You do what we all have to do to get our message out there. But we have all these tools and tech available. We're not reliant on the same newspaper model of the 1970s. It is new, but media companies have to innovate. The New York Times has done amazingly in pivoting to a digital world. They're making more money than they ever have. Other newspapers and firms, not so much. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people will continue to call on the government to fix the problem. So if we're able to put a little bit of a spotlight on what's happening in the U.S., again, it's the JCPA bill by Senator Klobuchar, who's, again, also an antitrust fangirl. That is at least something to highlight, because I think media like yours go against their narrative, because you're actually being able to put things out there, and hopefully we'll get you a lot more Substack subscribers so you can do it full time all the time.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But, it's a great example, because I started writing for my local print media. They're online too, of course, my local print media, because the media environment, the flagship newspaper, in fact, they just cut down no more Sunday papers, which was an institution for years. They're just going to have a weekend edition, stuff like that. The media landscape there is changing, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I do local, a local column as well. California had a bill about this we covered about a week or so ago. A smaller way, that's a lot of what Klobuchar and them pulled from California. Now, that's stalled out, but we did cover it. In fact, I think we called it How Not to Save Newspapers, because it's actually really bad for newspapers, too, when you get down to it, because we know what happens when you subsidize something. You can't really cover it, right? I completely agree with you. We will get on this Canada thing. We'll have to get one of our Canadian friends down for that. My thing with the media, though, just put a bow on this. Here's how we tie it all together. Watch this little media thing here. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and it's done pretty well under Jeff Bezos's thing, who also owns Amazon. And people will say, well, there's another, well, no, that's one of the models of media now. You have to have a rich benefactor that'll take care of a flagship institution, or you got to go the nonprofit route, like we've seen out in Utah and other places.
By the way,
you just have to be a New York Times and survive off your legacy, basically.
I mean, that was the storyline of Citizen Kane,
yes.
One of the best movies of all time from over 100 years ago.
Yes.
Was, rich benefactors, like how many millions of dollars are going to lose next year? I expect to lose 20 million that year and that year. When I'll run out of money in 100 years.
Yeah, you want to go back to yellow journalism and, invading Cuba, how far back you want to go. This stuff is not new, is the moral of the story, folks. That's why we got to turn the noise down on the news and talk to folks like our good friend Yael Ossowski, Consumer Choice Center. Great having you back. We're going to keep having you in the rotation, along with all of your many cohorts and the folks of your ilk, which people mean for bad, but I love it. I love calling people that. Let folks know how they can follow and keep up with you. We're going to link to your piece in the USA Today. Let them know what else you got going on until we get you back on Her Tell, my friend.
Yeah, well, to my fellow travelers, I'm on the Twitter, YAELOSS. I could talk to you about Nostr, a whole Bitcoin-powered social network, but we'll do that another time. But mostly find me there, over there at Consumer Choice Center, and I'm pretty Googleable at this point. Unique name, strange national origin. I'm there. International
man of mystery.
Yeah, you said we'll get somebody Canadian to talk about. I am Canadian. I know about this stuff too.
Yeah, you're a man of you're a citizen of the world, my friend. You are the consumer choice onion, one astounding layer after another, my friend. So
I've not yet been called an onion. My wife will like that. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Intro. It's been a pleasure, and Heard Tell. Let's do this.
Look, appreciate your support, my friend. We'll talk soon, sir.
All righty.
All the music on Her Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.
Folks, if you've listened to the Her Tell program, you've heard our friend Gabriella Hoffman, but you need to make sure you're checking out her podcast, District of Conservation. It's a podcast exploring the nuances of true conservation efforts from DC and beyond. From topic discussions to exclusive interviews with conservation and energy newsmakers, Gabriella keeps listeners appraised of the latest news stories while elevating important voices. Listen to the District of Conservation on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are played. Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, it's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. If you feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse,
this is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details. At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.